Welcome back on the AM show. Most definitely, we're repping the gold, green, black, and red of the Ghana flag. Today, we're hoping that as we lock horns with Uruguay, we beat them. But from there, let's talk about other matters that really affect our lives. Today, as I deliver my blunt thoughts, I've titled it, Our Economy in Shambles, Our Agriculture in Limbo, and Our MPs in Qatar. The never-ending madness we have to contend with. Ghana for the IMF team is back in town. Stéphane Roudet, the head of the team, says his outfit is here to help Ghana's economy bounce back and for some stability to be restored. Well, we're trying as a country to prevail over Uruguay as we lock horns with them today. But as we engage the IMF a 17th time, do we have what it takes to convince this outfit that we deserve a $3 billion bailout? And more importantly, can we position ourselves, should we get it, in such a way that we do not come back to the same point again? These are questions we all should carefully reflect on as a people. Look, this government has added on so many tax handles from the 2023 budget, from increased VAT, the removal of the threshold for mobile money transactions, and the introduction of additional withholding tax on gains from assets and liabilities, to the reversal of benchmark values and more. Our cumulative VAT will now stand at 21%, the highest in Africa. Why? What crime has the ordinary Ghanaian committed? Do our leaders ever learn, I ask? Take a good look at the e-levy, for example. Revenue from quarters 1 to 3 revealed that we raked in only a paltry 319 million Ghana cedis. Our revised revenue target for the entire year is now 594 million Ghana cedis, which is just 8.5% of the initial target of 6.9 billion Ghana cedis. This has forced the establishment to adjust the e-levy's revenue target downwards at least 4 times this year alone. The e-levy is now the worst performing tax handle in its subgroup, that is, taxes on domestic goods and services, yet we're still refusing to learn. Come with me. Look at this right here. Maize prices are set to go up in March 2023. In the midst of all this, maize prices are going up. Do you know what that means for agric inputs using maize as feed for animals? Do you know what that means from northern to southern Ghana as most of our meals use maize? How can the price of a major staple be so high and be looking at going even higher? But look at the second slide. It gets even worse. The fact that our policy rate is now perched at 27%. Do you have any idea what constraints that puts on borrowing from banks for business? Businesses are already folding up by the day. While hiking the policy rate has its benefits, I agree, it's also costing us so much, and the very entities we hope to rake in taxes from are dying off. Let's go to our third slide. Now, if you look at that, you see where our debt stock stands, and you look at how much each Ghanaian owes. In addition to all that, our debt stock is now over 450 billion Ghana cedis, and just keeps complicating matters even more. In fact, each Ghanaian today, like you see here, owes 15,000 Ghana cedis, considering our debt stock. Yes, some will say other countries have a far higher debt stock and breakdown when it comes to how much each person owes. That's so to speak. Yet the question to be asked is, how we compare to these economies in real terms of human development, job creation, technological advancement, and projects that are self-sponsoring over time. Over here, we often borrow merely for consumption, and then we want to compare ourselves to which countries again? Take Israel, for example. In 2019, our total debt stock as Ghanaians stood at $42.77 billion, with each Ghanaian owing the equivalent then of 1,417 cedis, dollars, 68 pence. In that same year, Israel's debt stock stood at $239.83 billion, and their individual debt, when calculated, stood at some 26,489.64 American dollars. But you tell me, is there any way, shape, or form in which we could have then or now compare ourselves to Israel in economic terms? That is why we should stop ranting foolishly and get to work. And speaking of getting to work, while the debate for a budget that could lift us or sink us as a people goes on, a number of our members of parliament find it apt to travel to watch football in Qatar. Wow. Even the Minister of Finance is not in town to sit through the debates. He may be in Germany on national assignment. But are we saying when we planned the date for the budget's presentation that we were not aware of those circumstances? What a sham and a crying shame. We had debates, and out of 137 majority MPs, you count only 37 on the floor. Hey! There's also this rhetoric, some very cheap talk that is becoming pretty popular here, especially among government operatives and blind supporters of the regime, that these ratings agencies like Fitch, Moody's, and S&P are biased towards African countries. Let's be clear. Don't fall into that racial trap on this. These ratings agencies would have lost their credibility a long time ago if they had conducted their activities in such a manner. Most of our African governments, like our own, are simply wailing over their own fiscal failures and general management inefficiencies. Now, there's talk of an African institution to do same for us. All well and good. My only hope, that we do not paint a pretty picture when the skies are actually gloomy. That we do not tickle ourselves into economic disaster on the continent because we fail to swallow the bitter pill and do some actual work to alleviate the plight of our poor. In Ghana today, as shared by Professor Godfred Bockman, over 14 million of our population, that is some 45%, are multidimensionally poor. If you consider World Bank data that suggests over 1 million Ghanaians have fallen into poverty this year, then you realize where we should be focusing our attention. Alas, our leaders are busy in parliament scoring political points and determining who the Harry Maguires and Romelu Lukakus of our political sphere are, instead of working on the festering issues that torment the ordinary Kofi and Amma daily right here. But just to clarify matters further in respect of these ratings agencies, they have standards and meet processes that they have to follow. When your economy shows certain telltale signs, they factor those into their assessments of your credit worthiness or otherwise. It's that simple. To use some concrete examples of same applied very recently to European entities, we know, for example, that on February 4, 2012, CNN Money reported how Moody's had cut the credit ratings of 6 European countries amid anxiety over the continent's debt crisis and its sluggish economy. Italy, Malta, Portugal, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Spain were all downgraded, while 3 other countries, Austria, France, and the United Kingdom, had the outlook on their then AAA ratings changed to negative. Ratings for Italy and Spain sat at A2 and A1 respectively, while Portugal was rated Ba2 with all negative outlooks. In March 2022, ratings agencies Fitch and Moody's downgraded Russia's sovereign risk by 6 notches, reducing it to junk status. According to Moody's, for example, when it downgraded Russia, it stated its position as follows, quote, it's a bit of a lengthy quote. The reported statement from the NSD on the non-payment of coupons on domestic government debt to non-resident investors, citing the CBR order prohibiting payments to non-residents, materially increases Moody's concerns around Russia's willingness and ability to pay. The escalating military invasion, the acceleration in the imposition of sanctions on Russia to include the most severe forms that Moody's had outlined previously, as well as the unpredictable actions that the government had undertaken in response to those sanctions, have, in Moody's view, significantly increased the risk of a default occurring. The rating of CA is consistent with Moody's expectation that the recovery for investors will be in line with the historical average for sovereigns in default. The high degree of coordination among Western countries to impose wide-ranging sanctions on Russia in response to the invasion of Ukraine has materially impaired Russia's ability to ensure timely repayment of its sovereign debt obligations. Restrictions on some Russian banks' access to the financial messaging system SWIFT, coupled with the direct sanctioning of large state-owned banks and the CBR, will effectively block these institutions from participating in the global financial system and make it exceptionally difficult for them to engage in international transactions. Given compliance risks, non-Russian institutions will be very reluctant to deal with sanctioned and likely also non-sanctioned entities within Russia. These restrictions on Russia's ability to execute its sovereign debt payments compound already significant concerns around Russia's willingness to service its debt. I had to just take time to go through all of this with you to make you realize that these things are not done simply out of someone's head. In November this year, global credit ratings agency Moody's downgraded its outlook for banks in Germany, Italy, and 4 other countries to negative from stable on as far as Europe's energy crisis and high inflation weakened its economies. The downgrade also affected banking sectors in the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia, and Moody's said the grouping included those most at risk of energy price inflation and possible energy rationing. These Ghana 4, you see, are not decisions that are taken lightly or taken with a certain regional tincture. So let us stop playing the victim and work to fix our economies instead. Zambia has gone for an IMF package, yes, but it was proactive. It commenced the painful journey of debt restructuring even before it got its IMF bailout. As it stands now, things are looking much better for them. Inflationary numbers have tumbled and the Zambian kwacha has a new lease of life. Why not us too? Every which way you look, wahala day for the ordinary man. Stay with me as I go through these slides. If you look here, right before I conclude, you would see what our finance minister, Ken Oforiatta, has been telling us. Indeed, our stock of debt has increased by 93 billion Ghana cedis this year alone due to the depreciation of the cedi since the beginning of 2022. Now, who caused the depreciation of the cedi? If you look at the cedi's depreciation losses, 93 billion Ghana cedis, the equivalent of $7 billion, is what has been added to our debt stock just by depreciation alone. And yet, look at how much we are going to the IMF for. 3 billion, 4 billion less than the value. So stabilizing a cedi alone, or failing to do so, has cost us this much, 4 billion in excess of what we are looking for. When you look at the January 2022 figures, and this is, for those of you who have been watching this segment, some months back, I think in September, I shared with you a friend who is taking a program at the London Dental Institute and has to pay £750 a month. She was paying from around 7,000. It had shot up to around 8,500 thereabouts. She was paying an extra 1,500 Ghana cedis. But look at the difference now. Look at what she has to pay. So as of January, £750 was equivalent to, sticking to the Bank of Ghana rates, I'm not using the Abochi rate, 6,000 Ghana cedis. Now, as of November 2022, £750, even using the Bank of Ghana rate, not the street rate, 12,000 Ghana cedis. That's an increment of 6,000 Ghana cedis. How do you expect people to cope? In terms of the initial revenue projections for the e-levy, I've already taken you through them. Provisionally, what we had in mind, this was the initial projection. We came down to under 5 billion, and this is the outturn so far. But I mentioned that I was going to talk about agriculture as well. There's something interesting happening to us. We have 1D1F, we have planting for food and jobs, and yet it appears when it comes to our exports, they're only becoming more. We are not able to produce enough to take care of ourselves here. We have planting for food and jobs, we have 1D1F. What exactly is happening? If you look at the data, the breakdown, and the breakdowns, we have crops, cocoa, livestock, forestry, logging, and fishing. You would realize from the trajectory that according to data, we have seemingly been increasing for a while, since 2014. But when you look at the first half of 2021 and you make the comparison to the first half of 2022, you see a problem, glaring problem. Look at the production average, first half 2021, when it comes to agriculture overall, 8.9%. When you look at 2022, it's fallen by 4 percentage points to 4.9%. When you break down to crops, look at how much we were looking at, 10.2%, now it's 4.5%. When you look at cocoa, 10.4%, now it's 1.6%, first half, 2021 to 2022. When you look at livestock, that is another area of concern, at least another place where we are seeing a marginal increment, 5.6 to 5.7. So for that place, we have seen some increment. But forestry and logging, and what figure you see here could be on the back of Galamsey as well. Look at that. 6.2%. We are now in negative territory, negative 0.4%. And finally, fishing, and this could also be on the back of the closed season. Here we have a positive. It's moved from negative 0.1% to 15.9%, which is a plus. But when you look at all the other metrics, we are not faring well. And the question is, why? Look at these dynamics in terms of planting for food and jobs. And this is how I'll wrap. If you look at how much we've been investing, it's been incremental. Look at the trajectory. We've been spending more and more on planting for food and jobs. Yet where are the dividends? How does that cushion us? In 2018, 400 million Ghana cedis. It dipped slightly in 2019, 380 million Ghana cedis. In 2020, 400 million. In 2021, 439 million Ghana cedis. It shot up to 614 million, or at least that is the figure for this year, 2022. And the projection in 2023 is 660 million Ghana cedis. Yet what do we have to show? Like the Israeli example I cited, we can compare ourselves with these countries. Our debt stock is this, and theirs is that, and borrowing is not a problem. The problem is how much you have to show, what you have to show. When you invest in a bank, you want to see dividends, right? So, Mr. President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, ministers of state, members of parliament, members of the council of state, fellow Ghanaians, where we find ourselves now as a people is beyond crisis. There is a saying attributed to Sir Winston Churchill that if you're going through hell, keep going. In this hellish case we find ourselves burdened with, though, the way forward only seems worse for the ordinary man, woman, and child. Fuel prices are going down a bit. True, we thank government for that. But nothing else has changed or is changing. The prices of products are still what they are. We need real leadership, real change, real direction, and real action. Not tomorrow, but today. As I've told you time and again, Mr. President, the time to act is now. For tomorrow may be too late. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. I say all these things because I am extremely passionate about Ghana and what her future, intricately tied to ours, holds. These are my blunt thoughts served for you this morning, raw, hot, unedited, and undiluted. God richly bless our motherland and make her great and strong.